lights go on. And out they go now, and it's a good start by Jordan Johnson from the outside of the front row. A good start too from Ben Short. He's already up to about P3 as they make their way down towards Rich's corner. Has he got to the lead by the first corner, Ben Short? Yes, he has. Well, from 6th on the grid into the lead. A stupendous performance that from Ben Short. Multiple winner already this season. And now into the lead of the race as well. From in second place, just about everybody, I think.
Well, I think it's George King, is it not? Which
yes.
makes this reverse grid pretty pointless, really, because they're already where they were for the rest of the weekend. But perhaps the other drivers are in slightly different positions. We did have a smaller number of reversed cars, really, didn't we? 6 cars, but anyway, it shouldn't really take that little time, should it? A very good start by Ben Short, it has to be said. There he is. Yeah, it's George King in second. Scott Leach, now he's got a chance. He's there in third. Jordan Johnson and Ben Hansey battling over the championship with Oak Richardson too, really. They're 4th, 5th and 6th all together. They've got to deal with Scott Leach then in this race, it would seem. But Short versus King. Oh, King is sideways. Hansey's, no, not Hansey. Leach was out wide there in P3, but I think everybody dealt with the corner okay in the end. I mean, Leach is very wide again at the next corner, Oggy, so that could give Jordan Johnson the chance. Yeah, he's down the inside, he's into third after the poor race earlier. He's, I think, one of his worst of the season. He's now trying to get back into third. He is alongside Scott Leach, who's had a podium this season. But I think George King is going after Ben Short then in this race. And it's going to be a two-way tussle up front while the battles continue behind. It is Scott Leach back ahead of Jordan Johnson.
It is, and some locking up just behind him as well. Rest of the field making their way safely through. Brundle and Nelson for the first time in this race. There's the 91 car of Steve Quenby, and just ahead of the 46 of Nico Favreau, turning their way through the right-hander at the bomb hole. And Ben Short's off. Ben Short is off the road. He's pulling off at Coram. His car up against the tyre barriers, and Ben Short is out of the race. So that's a turn up for the books. George King it is then that leads. Second place is Scott Leach. Third is Jordan Johnson. Fourth is Oak Richardson. And fifth is Ben Hansey. Problems, most of new stuff, a reliability issue in MX-5s for Ben Short.
Yes, majority of the races this year, actually, everybody has finished, which shows you the driving standards as well in the championship. But we didn't see, if anything, caused Ben Short's moment, because George King has come back to the back of the pack as well. So whether something did go on there between the two, not sure how Ben Short's pulled off. It feels like it's a mechanical. For second place, they are as we really left them off. Scott Leach and Jordan Johnson alongside one another. Ian Tomlinson's up there this time. We haven't really seen him shine this weekend, but he's up there with Ben Hansey now, the multiple winner this year, Hansey, and multiple champion in the past as well. Hansey, who's had 3 wins this season. But George King trying to put some daylight again between himself and Scott Leach, whose best result this year has been a third. He's currently in P2, but a battle which involves about 6 cars all the way back to Lloyd Huggins. Can Lloyd get a good result out of this as well, potentially? Which would be really good for him. I think he's had a 5th this season as he's better. He's in this pack for battling for second. Hansey is on the inside of Richardson. Had to be careful there not to make contact and had to back out of it, which is going to give Ian Tomlinson the chance on the outside line. Round the outside comes Tomlinson. Can he get the better of Hansey here? Potentially. Huggins very much involved in this battle. Who is less experienced than the 2 drivers ahead of him. He only started racing a few years ago, the aircraft technician Lloyd Huggins. For second place, Jordan Johnson still trying to get the better of Scott Leach. He's been doing this for a lap. Is it going to work this time? I think it might do. Into the S's, he goes through. He gets down the inside then of Oak Richardson, does Jordan Johnson to go second.
Of Scott Leach, in fact,
yes.
Second. Oak Richardson in 4th. Ben Hansey 5th. Ian Tomlinson 6th, Lloyd Huggins, the 26-year-old from Hemel Hempstead, is in 7th position. So George King now establishing a bit of a lead here over Jordan Johnson, now up into second place. So George King looking good. I think he had one winner at one point last season, did he?
Yes.
I seem to remember.
Yeah, he won at Silverstone when Ben Short wasn't about, and again it's when Ben Short's not going to finish, where a potential win is on the card. Scott Leach is not giving up on second at this stage, is he? He's right there on the tail of Jordan Johnson, there in 92 in P2 at the moment.
At the minute, Johnson's got a couple of cars between himself and Ben Hansey, though, which could be important for the championship.
Oak Richardson adjusted his mirror as he brakes to the hairpin after running a little wide at the previous bend. Yeah, Hansey, if anything, feels like he's trying to hang on to fifth rather than moving forward, with Tomlinson challenging from behind. And Lloyd Huggins there as well.
Round Palmer they come for the third time in what will probably be a 7-lap race for the 15 minutes that are available to us in this Switch MX-5 Cup by 5 Club. There's the 40 car of Hansey, the white and green car prepared by BS Motorsport. Matthew Pennefather near, number 21 goes through as well. He's ahead of Thomas Holland, and then Samuel Gorman heads the next group. Jake Micklewright just behind him. Micklewright now getting himself ahead of David Brown, who in turn is ahead of Matthew Short, who is the leading Short remaining in this race.
Yeah, David Brown fairly well up here, isn't he? There, just outside the top 10, which is a good effort. Have we seen him potentially a couple of times in the top 10 this year? He's nearly there again today. They're in 27, just ahead of Matthew Short, you just mentioned, the retired GP, who has been racing all sorts of things over the years. Started off in MGs before racing Mazdas. Sprinted on hill climb before moving to circuit racing. So experienced motorsport competitor in the various different disciplines, but much more recently, or for a long time recently, I should say, racing in circuit racing and battling away here with David Brown, who he started alongside. Just behind them is Martin Vernon, who started the weekend badly yesterday, but he's had a much better day today. So he is up next. He's had a better result of 8th this year. And he's moving closer to positions perhaps we expect him to be in. But we continue to look at the battle between David Brown and Matthew Short as we come up to half distance in this race.
Yeah, we do. 7.5 minutes gone, 7.5 minutes left to go. So we should just squeeze 7 laps out of it. Turning their way through which as they go. George King arrives at the hairpin. Again, good straps going on further back. That's Ben Hansey locking up into Wilson. Is that going to cost him? I think Ian Tomlinson will go through. Will Lloyd Huggins go through as well? Huggins will be on the outside line for Palmer. Let's see if he can do anything about him there. In fact, Hansey can fight back on Tomlinson. No, I don't think he can. So Hansey does lose one position with that lock up into Wilson. But Huggins was unable to make his way through. So the Northamptonshire driver Hansey down to 6th place now, behind Tomlinson. Is that going to be 7th at Agostini? Well, it's going to be 6th because Tomlinson has gone wide and lost 2 places there at Agostini. It's Huggins now up to 5th. And no, it's not. It's Hansey up to 5th on the inside at Hamilton. So Hansey 5th, Huggins 6th, Tomlinson 7th. Is that sorted now? I'm not quite so sure it is, but that's the orders they head into Oggies on lap 4.
Well, a couple of corners ago, I didn't think it was going to be Ben Hansey that came out on top in this little battle because he was the one dropping positions. Lloyd Huggins, though, I don't think he's been battling with Ben Hansey before, so he'll be delighted with this. Someone who won't be delighted with things is Martina Ward, who's been involved in an accident in her BS Motorsport car for the woman that was brought up in Bulgaria but lives in Kent nowadays. But for Martina Ward, in I think her first season of racing, this weekend at Snetterton, it's not ended too well.
It's not. That's a great shame. That's a couple of BS Motorsport cars that aren't making it to the end. It's Martina, the 35-year-old living in Staplehurst these days, technical program manager in her rookie season of racing. She's done quite a bit on sims though, and she's previously worked in Formula 1 management as well. But we'll go back to this battle for 5th, which is being headed by Ben Hansey at the moment from Lloyd Huggins and Ian Tomlinson. They've experimented with all of the different potential orders, I think, during the courses of this lap. And now Lloyd Huggins gets a good exit out of the Murray's left-hander and is almost pushing Ben Hansey up the centre straight. Can he find a way through? He's right behind him. Will he dive out of the toe as they go up towards Richie's? Just looking out of our commentary box, no, he doesn't. So it is still Hansey that's ahead. There's our race leader, George King, who looks fairly comfortable. He's nearly 3 seconds clear of Jordan Johnson at the moment. Now, what's going to happen in this battle for fifth at the hairpin this time? Anyone going to lock up? No, we've all managed to get through there okay this time, I think. Then you've got the next two, Matthew Neal, number 21, and Thomas Holland, number 230. They're having their own battle for 8th place.
They were significantly quicker than these three, probably because they were battling on the previous lap. So, although I think Holland perhaps has been quicker than these three during the race, so we'll see how he gets on. Holland, who was on the podium here in British GT a few weeks ago before Action Sway's co-driver eliminated his podium position. So he's a new co-driver in British GT now. There's Tom Holland. He's there in 9th position. He is chasing Matthew Neal, and then he's got these three. Now, it's actually starting to get away, potentially from Huggins and Tomlinson. Particularly, Lloyd Huggins is doing really good here, isn't he? Because he's up with people who have been racing and scoring podiums and wins and championships in the case of Ben Hansey for seasons now in this, where for Lloyd Huggins he only started racing in 2019. Just get a shot there of George King, the leader. He's 3 seconds ahead of Jordan Johnson and Scott Leach. Revoke Richardson 4th, Ben Hansey 5th, and this is the sort of result, if it stays this way, which will really suit Jordan Johnson in the championship battle. Out
of Brundle and Nelson, there they go, and towards the bomber hole. Best lap of this race so far is to the race leader, George King, a 2:24.42. Wins the low 2:23s in the earlier race, but I guess George King doesn't quite need to push on in this race with no Ben Short to do battle with. Here is the Ben Hansey battle. Black and white driving standards flag being shown to a couple of different drivers for that time, I think, but we've not been notified of any actual penalties as yet. Jordan Johnson still there in 2nd place, number 92, but Scott Leach really hasn't allowed him much respite, has he? In 3rd place, the number 13 car for the man from Warwickshire.
Big battle into Ritchie, so almost 3 abreast in that battle for 5th, but they stayed in the same order, I think. So no changes behind this battle for 2nd. This is the best Scott Leach has looked this weekend, I think, isn't it? He's had good pace this time around. He had that podium right at the beginning of the season at Croft, but we haven't seen him there since. There he is in that distinctive looking car.
The two with driving standards flags there were Samuel Gummer 128 and Matthew Short with 72. They seem driving standards flag that time around.
As we mentioned earlier, and Leach involved in Mazda racing for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. In this championship and in others, usually pretty quick towards the front. But yes, I've been commentating on Mazda MX-5 for a long time, and Scott Leach has been pretty much an ever-present with that familiar livery, Camp Farm Pet Shop branding on the side.
Of course, Mazda MX-5 racing ever so popular, not just here in Britain, but elsewhere as well, particularly the factory championship in the United States, which had their most recent round IndyCar driver race winner James Hinchcliffe guested in it. So Mazda racing ever so popular everywhere, I think, throughout the world.
More than 30 years old, these Mark 1s though now. There was a manufactured about one make championship for MX-5 very briefly. Patrick Watts was successful in that, I seem to remember, at one point, but yes, that was short-lived, and then it was only the early 2000s really when Alan Robson and others launched championships for Mark 1 MX-5s as a club-level series.
Yeah, the championship in the States, of course, factory-backed and with prize money, something that we haven't really seen in British motorsport really at all for a while. Certainly not on the the large numbers you get there. Interesting though, British drivers decided to try it, but I think probably the costs would. You need to be winning the championship really to get your money back, even with the prize money in particular. And I think this year in particular, it's meant the driving standards have gone a bit crazy, and there's been a lot of damaged cars, which sort of goes against the point of what you're achieving, doesn't it?
We're on to the last lap here. George King did his personal best lap of the race and the best lap of the race on the previous lap, 2:24.41, extending his lead to 3.26 seconds over Jordan Johnson, who also did a PB, but Johnson, a bit slower. Yeah,
Johnson only a tenth outside of the fastest lap, so if you can get that, every point counts in this point system, really, doesn't it? So if he could get that, that would be pretty handy.
It's kind of wasted on George King, isn't it, who's not really going for the championship, so it would be better in a way if one of Jordan Johnson or Ben Hansey had it. Hansey quite a bit, so his best lap time was 2:26.07, so more than 1.6 seconds slower than the race leader.
Yeah, but Ben Short mentioning earlier that he doesn't think he'll be contesting the final couple of meetings, which I would imagine probably means George King won't be either. So that will open things up perhaps a little bit at the final meetings at Silverstone at Donington Park. A couple of tracks actually which should suit this style of racing very well, with big long straights on the international circuit at Silverstone. I think it's the Grand Prix track this time round, isn't it, at Donington in September?
I think so. Yeah. So watching the leader George King head through. Was told to pull his socks up yesterday by Ben Short. And he said that he had done for this morning's race, but it was a bit of a closer contest between the two of them. And here, George King, after the demise of Ben Short on lap 1, which remains a bit of a mystery, has led throughout. He's heading into the final couple of corners now. Through Quorum he goes, past the stricken car of Ben Short, which stopped at that part of the circuit, and into Murray's for the final time. So it is going to be number 4, George King, the driver from Ben Fleet, that is going to come through. Still lots to be sorted out further back, including in this battle between David Brown and Jake Mickelwright. But up to the line comes George King to take the checkered flag. There's a 5-second penalty for Lloyd Huggins, by the way, that just appeared on the timing screen. Second place goes the way of Jordan Johnson. Third is Scott Leach, number 13.